Hey everyone, this is David Brown with the migration update for April 8th, 2023 from the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. Today had clear skies and light northeasterly winds. I stayed at the platform throughout the morning and into the mid-afternoon. Around 2 o'clock I shifted over to Frisbee Hill Park where the winds remained out of the northeast, but there was a little bit of cloud cover moving in the final hours of the day. Taking a look at some birds from today, here we have a male lesser scaup. So if you notice the shape of the head, it has a little peak here towards the back of the head, and that's a good field mark for lesser scaup. Greater scaup has more of a rounded head with kind of a bulging forehead. Another secondary thing you can look at is the color of the head. So we see that this head color is more of a purple sheen. The iridescence is purple, whereas on greater scaup, a lot of times the iridescence looks green. And you can remember that because of green, greater, both start with GR. It's not 100% and it depends on the angle of the sun and things like that, but it's something you can use as a supporting trait. Here we have a pied-billed grebe, kind of looking like the Loch Ness Monster. Here we have two scaup flying by, and I believe that these are both lesser scaup. And one thing we can look at is where the brighter white is on the wing. So we see on both birds, it has a lot of bright white only on the secondaries. Once we get onto the primaries, it's more of just a gray. And on this bird here, we see that that bright white stops. On greater scaup, a lot of times that bright white extends partway, midway onto the primaries. Here's a pair of wood ducks with the male on the top left and the female on the bottom right. Here's an osprey that was checking us out as we were checking him out. Here's a belted kingfisher flying past. Here we have a juvenile red-shouldered hawk, which was actually a lifer for someone on the platform, so that's always exciting when we can show someone a life bird, especially one that comes this close. Let's talk about the field marks of this bird. So first of all, it's a buteo, so it's kind of got that red-tailed hawk kind of shape, but we notice that this bird does not have the dark petagio bars in the shoulder area that we would see on a red tail, and instead of a thick belly band in the middle here, it's got more even streaking that starts on the upper breast and extends down to kind of that same belly band area, but it's not that thick belly band like we see on red tails. The tail on red shoulders usually looks longer. Actually, in closer photos like this, I think it's not as obvious. When you see it from a distance, it stands out a little bit more that they have kind of a different shape than red tails, maybe a little less bulky, a little bit longer tail. And let's take a look at the wing tips, because that's a really helpful field mark. So one thing that we see, first of all, is that we have translucent crescents where the sun is shining through. We see that on both wing tips. And that's especially true when the bird's backlit like this. Although when it's backlit, we see a lot of light shining through all the wing. But it was definitely noticeable that it has those translucent crescents. Another thing to point out is that both red-tailed hawks and red-shouldered hawks have 5 feathers that make up the wingtip. So if we look here, we see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's different than broad-winged hawks, which only have 4 feathers that make up the wingtip. And so that gives broad-winged hawks a very pointed wingtip. And that's something that'll be important for distinguishing red shoulders from broad wings. And that's important because we should start getting broad wings sometime this week. So we can see that this bird has 5 feathers making up the wingtip, and it is tucking the wingtips back slightly. Sometimes in a soar, they really stretch it out more, and it's more obvious that it's a blunt wingtip. But when we start seeing those broad-winged hawks, we'll see that they have really pointed wingtips, and that's one way that we can distinguish between juvenile red shoulders and juvenile broad wings, because otherwise their plumage is extremely similar. Also notice that since this bird is a juvenile, it does not have a dark trailing edge to the wing. And we see that on red tails as well, where the adults have a dark trailing edge and the juveniles don't. You see it on broad wings as well. So it's true for the buteos that we're seeing, that adults have the dark trailing edge and juveniles do not. It gives the juveniles a bit more of a pale appearance because they don't have that outline to the wing. Here's another osprey, and osprey just have a really distinctive shape. They have such long wings, really lanky look to them. When we see them in the distance, they have a bow to the wings, almost like the McDonald's M. Here's a turkey vulture going by, and there was sort of a slow trickle of turkey vultures throughout the day. The flight stayed somewhat close to the platform or a little bit to the parkway side. So I stayed at the platform for a while just because it was a weekend, so there were a lot of people visiting, and we pretty much had the flight line. I was afraid if we moved into Frisbee, we would not be seeing much at all. Here's a tundra swan, probably one that I saw the other day. And most of the tundra swans came through about a month ago. That's when the peak was, right at the beginning of March. But this bird has been around twice now in the past few days. So it's sort of a late lingering tundra swan. And this one actually flew in with 3 mute swans. And the size difference was apparent because mute swans are much larger than tundra swans. I mean, to the point when it was on the water next to them, the mute swans literally looked twice as big as the tundra swan. And we also see that this bird has a dark bill compared to the orange bill that mute swans show. And we know it's not a trumpeter swan because a trumpeter swan would be about the same size as the mute swan. It wouldn't be much smaller. And also the black bill would be much larger on a trumpeter swan. Here's a nice immature bald eagle coming up on 2 years old. And we can see that it has an uneven trailing edge to the wing, where you can see the longer retained juvenile feathers here and also here. And then you see the shorter, darker ones that have already been replaced. Around 2 o'clock, the flight had really died off at the platform, and so I decided to move into Frisbee Hill and see if we could pick up a flight there. This is the typical direction we're looking at Frisbee Hill. The birds would be coming towards us. And that tree in front of us there is what's called the magic tree, because birds seem to appear and disappear behind that tree. And if you've never been to Frisbee Hill, it's basically a park where you park near the playground. There's a little parking area, and then you walk back in along. There's a little road that cuts back in, and then the trail cuts into this tree line, and you just follow the trail up onto the small hill, and we stand right next to a wooden windbreak in the sled riding area. So here's a photo taken from up on the hill. And so the parking area and Frisbee Hill Road is over in this area. You park there, and then this is the trail that you walk up in. And then right up here, just off to my right, is that wooden windbreak. And we had some migration activity at Frisbee Hill. A slow trickle of vultures continued, but the main thing putting on a show was the nesting ospreys. And you can see 2 osprey perched up here on top of the cell phone tower, one all the way up top, one down here, and they nest in this top middle section. And here's one of the osprey coming to the nest with a fish. Taking a look at the eBird checklist, today at the platform I had 70 species, so pretty good day. And at Frisbee Hill, only 24 species. And taking a look at hawk count for our migrant raptor totals, today we had 180 turkey vultures, 1 osprey, 6 bald eagles, 2 northern harriers, 2 sharp-shinned hawks, 1 Cooper's hawk, 1 red-shouldered hawk, 5 red-tailed hawks, for a total of 198 migrant raptors. That brings us to a total of 10,126 migrants for April and a season total of 19,298. Some other non-raptor highlights that we had included 2 Caspian terns, an eastern phoebe, a common raven, and a purple martin. And we had 1 new species for the season, which was northern rough-winged swallow. And taking a look at the forecast for tomorrow, it's looking very similar to today, with mainly sunny skies, a little bit warmer with a high in the upper 40s, winds north rather than northeast at 5 to 10 miles per hour, but won't make much of a difference. Still an unfavorable wind. We may move to Frisbee Hill again if we don't have the flight line at the Hawk platform. So would expect light, maybe moderate migration, but overall I would expect it to be pretty similar to today, when really, even though we didn't have a huge number of migrants, we had some pretty good looks at birds, as you can tell from my photos. For Monday, we're looking at sunny with some clouds, high in the upper 50s, winds west at 5 to 10 miles per hour, so decent wind direction, a little bit light, but that's okay. I would expect moderate migration. And for Tuesday, we're looking mostly cloudy with a high in the low to mid 60s, winds west-southwest at 15 to 25 miles per hour, so Tuesday is looking like an excellent day, and even the next few days after that are also looking good, so expect moderate to good migration on Tuesday. All right, well, it was a fairly nice day at the Hawk Watch, a lot of people stopping out since it's the weekend. Maybe we'll see some more people out tomorrow on Easter Sunday, and I hope you can visit us soon at the Braddock Bay Hawk Watch. From Lyco Birds, this is David Brown. Thanks for watching.